The inner story of Psalm 18 is the soul that is delivered from the false gods: fear, accusation, violence, self-preservation, survival, and the old kingly ego that tried to govern without God. Psalm 18 is the song of a disciple who has been hunted and surrounded and shaken and nearly consumed by the old life. But the Lord intervenes. The outer story is David delivered from Saul and his enemies. The inner story is the soul delivered from the false gods. And what are the false gods, if not enemies? The psalm works like this: love, distress, there's the crying, divine descent, the rescue, and then things being put into the right places. There's a reordering, strength increasing, victory, and ultimately praise. The disciple begins by saying, "I love thee, O Lord." It is always good to start a prayer with praise. We need to remind ourselves that God exists, that we're not working with a concept. God is our strength and our rock and our fortress, our shield and buckler, and all of the other things that you read about in the Psalms. So in Psalm 18, David describes the Lord in all of these ways and gives him praise: strength, rock, fortress, and so on. He remembers being surrounded by death and destruction when he's crying out to God and being heard. Then he describes the Lord's intervention in like this cosmic language. He's saying, the earth shakes, the smoke and fire come from God's presence, the heavens bow down, darkness surrounds him, and thunder breaks forth. These are great visualizations for the story at its most outer level, and they also make sense for the inner journey of the disciple. The earth is your worldly experience. God rescues David from powerful enemies, and not because David was strong enough, but because the Lord delighted in him. Because David was responsive. David then reflects on righteousness and obedience and the purity of God's way. The Lord strengthens him and teaches him to fight, and enlarges his steps and subdues his enemies, and establishes him as king. The psalm ends with praise again. God gives great deliverance to his king and shows mercy to David and his seed forever. So for the disciple, this is what happens when we survive the rule of the false king. Saul is not merely an enemy outside of David. Saul, and his name is not a coincidence, by the way, represents the old governing self, the threatened and jealous and unstable old man, religious enough to use God language, but not really surrendered, not really able to obey God. David represents the anointed inner man. He's not yet fully enthroned, but he's already chosen. So Psalm 18 is the song sung after the inner David has survived the inner Saul. This is very good news. The soul says, I was surrounded by death, I was trapped by old patterns, I was pursued by fear, I cried from the temple of my own heart, and God heard. Then the Lord descends, and this is not some kind of sentimental descent. He shakes the whole internal world. He breaks the atmosphere, he bends the heavens, he rides upon the cherub, and he makes darkness his secret place. He thunders, he rescues. So this is a lot more than just comfort. It is deliverance as upheaval. And you can experience this in your regular life in a way that is often very surprising and changes the course of your worldly life. You may find yourself in a different vocation. You may find yourself surrounded by different people. Old habits and hobbies that you may have been interested in fall away, and you get new ones, better ones. The old order cannot remain stable when God comes to free the anointed life inside the disciple. So this is how we are reordered, if we are fortunate enough to be. This psalm, a prayer, is the victory song for your inner David surviving your inner Saul. Not only rescued, but put in the right place. The Lord does not only remove enemies, he becomes the disciple's strength, literally. And then he trains the disciple's hands and enlarges his steps and lights his candle and establishes him in the large place, the secret place most high. God rescues the anointed life within you. Then he teaches you to stand. Amen.